year is 2015. It's April, and the ground in Nepal begins to shake violently.
It was a magnitude 7.8 earthquake.
And by the time the dust settled, nearly 9,000 people were dead, and almost 900,000 houses were just gone or damaged beyond repair. A tragedy on a massive scale.
It was, and the immediate global reaction was to rush in and help the affected communities rebuild with safer houses.
Right. So today on the Geoversity podcast, we're not looking at the immediate disaster phase. We're going to look at what happens after.
After the cameras leave.
Exactly. We're looking at an intriguing study by researchers at ITC, Aditya Pradana Ganda Saputra, Nina Schwarz, and Eefje Hendriks.
It's a study that asks the question, when regular families are left to rebuild their lives, why do some build safe houses, while others, even right next door, do not?
That's an inconsistency that's so interesting. Same neighborhood, same village, but often different outcomes. So set the scene for me. Where are we?
So we're in the Akaltunga district, which is in Koshi province in eastern Nepal. We're talking rural, rugged, mountainous Nepal, where roads might just be donkey tracks. So the researchers went there and they surveyed over 2,000 households. And for this paper, focused on 449 of them. And, this is the key part, they brought engineers with them to physically inspect the houses.
So it's not just a survey asking, hey, did you build an earthquake-resistant house? Where everyone, of course, says, yes, I did.
Right, they didn't take their word for it. They actually checked the seismic resistance of houses on 14 specific engineering points. Specific wall thickness, wall height, small openings in the walls, bands.
Roofing materials.
If you take specific measures, you can actually prepare your house for earthquakes. The team looked at what really helps or limits people from rebuilding a safer house. The results? They honestly flipped a lot of what we assume about aid and development right on its head.
You'd think that having more money or hiring a professional would guarantee safety.
You'd think, but the data says not necessarily. In fact, sometimes those things made the houses less safe.
Okay, let's unpack this. We've got a few big areas to cover. Geography, money, jobs, knowledge, and motivation. So let's start with the land itself.
Right, so picture these villages. Some you can drive a truck to, others you have to hike for hours.
Or use pack animals.
Exactly. The study found a strong correlation between vehicle access and housing safety. If a truck can reach the village, the house is likely safer.
Right, that one seems pretty intuitive. If I can get a truck with high-quality cement and steel up the mountain, I can build a stronger house.
On the surface, yes, it's a logistics issue. The data showed that in areas facing limited accessibility, 56% of houses had thinner walls and 78% had smaller structural bands compared to the guideline recommendations.
Okay, let's pause on structural bands. Oh, we're going to say that a lot. So for those of us who aren't engineers, what are we talking about?
So the bands work similarly to strings around a birthday present, going around the house to keep everything together when the world is shaking.
Okay.
A structural band is like a belt made of timber or reinforced concrete that encircle the house at various levels, such as the floor, the windows, and the roof. So it ties all the separate walls together so they move as a single unit during an earthquake.
Got it. So it turns a pile of bricks into a solid box.
Yeah, that's a perfect way to put it. Now, imagine every bag of cement for that concrete belt has to be carried up the mountain by a donkey.
You're going to use less of it.
You're going to skimp. You prioritize what's possible over what's perfect.
That makes total sense. But this is where the data gets weird. You'd think scarcity is always bad, but the study found a kind of scarcity paradox.
This is one of the most intriguing findings.
Households that reported limitations in material availability actually built safer houses. How is that possible?
It defies economic logic, but it makes sense psychologically speaking. When a material is scarce and precious, you become very deliberate. You treat that one bag of cement like it's gold dust.
You don't waste any of it.
Not a drop. You plan. You make sure it goes exactly where it needs for structural integrity.
Whereas if you've just got a huge pile of local stone and mud lying around,
you get complacent. The study suggests that easy access to local stuff often led to easy and cheap building. People just start building without the rigor and without paying attention to the quality of the materials used.
So easy can be the enemy of safe.
In this context, absolutely. Scarcity forces discipline.
And what about labor? Was it hard to find masons?
It was a factor, sure, but a surprisingly small one. In these villages, neighbors help neighbors. The community kind of fills that labor gap. The real story isn't about who's building, but about who's paying.
Which brings us to the money trail. This is crucial. The study separates money into two buckets, conditional and unconditional.
And that distinction is everything. Conditional aid comes from the governments and NGOs. it comes in installments or tranches.
So you don't just get a big check up front.
No, you get a little bit to start the foundation. Then an inspector comes. Is it deep enough? Yes. Here's the next check.
Did you put in the structural bands?
Okay, yes. Here's the final check. There are strings attached.
Strings that pull you towards safety.
And it worked. The study found a strong positive link between this conditional aid and safe housing. It forced compliance.
So if we contrast that with the other bucket, money from family, remittances from a brother working abroad, a gift from an aunt, unconditional cash.
This is the heartbreaking part. Money from relatives was associated with negative housing safety.
Negative. So having more family money actually made your house less safe?
Statistically, yeah. Because that money had no strings attached. Imagine you're a low-income family. You need food, you need school fees, maybe new livestock. Suddenly, you get a lump sum from your brother.
Am I going to spend that money on extra steel rebar that no one can even see inside the walls, or do I spend it on things my family needs right now?
Exactly. Or you spend it to make the house look nicer. A fancy paint job, bigger porch, without that inspector holding the next check. Long-term technical safety takes a backseat to immediate needs or just aesthetics. It doesn't have to be earthquake resistant. It's your own choice.
This really challenges the idea that cash transfers are always the best solution. We love the idea of giving people the freedom to act for themselves.
It suggests household actions need guardrails. It's not that money isn't needed, it absolutely is, but just adding money doesn't solve the safety problem, unless there's a mechanism to make sure it buys things like rebar, not just rice.
Speaking of income, let's move on to how people earn that money, their livelihoods. In the paper, for example, they look at soldiers versus shopkeepers.
And this was one of the starkest contrasts in the whole study. If the head of the household was in the army, their house was significantly safer.
Why the army? Is it just, they're disciplined, they like following rules?
It's a tempting story, isn't it? But the economic reality is probably stronger. An army salary in Nepal is stable, it's reliable, it's pretty high compared to farming.
So we're talking about income security.
Exactly. They can afford the good materials. They can afford to wait for skilled labor. They don't have to rush or cut corners.
Okay, so stability breeds safety. Now, on the other end of that, the business owners,
Yeah.
shopkeepers, tailors.
They built the less safe houses. And it's fascinating because it's not just about income. It's a fundamental conflict between commerce and structural engineering.
What do you mean?
So think about a village shop. What's the number one thing you need?
You need customers. You need a big open front so that people can see your goods and come inside.
Right, a big wide open front, which means no front wall on the ground floor. You just have a shutter you pull up.
Okay, I see where this is going.
You've created what engineers call a soft story. You've removed the very walls that are supposed to resist the side-to-side shaking of an earthquake.
Right.
The heavy house is just sitting on flimsy legs.
So the house becomes more vulnerable to collapse when the ground shakes.
Right. And then there's location. Shopkeepers build right on the edge of the road where the people are, but the road is often cut into a steep, unstable slope. They prioritize the customer over the building code.
Did the official guidelines have a solution for this? Safe design for a shop?
And that's the design gap. So the government released a catalogue of safe house designs, but they were almost all for just living in small, boxy, safe houses. They didn't really have a pre-approved safe design for a shop house. So people improvised.
And improvisation is the last thing you want in a seismic zone. So let's move on to the next point then. And this is the one that I think is the most counterintuitive, the knowledge paradox. Who do you trust?
This is where the data really pushes back. So they ask people where they got their building advice. If they say they listened to authorities like government officials, they generally built safer houses.
Makes sense. The government enforces the code through the conditional cash.
But, and this is the big but, if they said they relied on professionals or documents or consulting building experts, they often ended up with less safe houses.
Wait, hold on. If I go to an expert, I expect a better outcome, not a worse one. How is that possible?
It sounds impossible, but you have to understand what was happening in 2015. There are three things at play here. First, there's a huge gap between trusting and doing. The survey found that 78% of people who said they trusted professionals didn't actually hire one to be on site. It was aspirational, like, I trust engineers, but my cousin is cheaper, so he's building it.
So it's just lip service to expertise.
Basically. Second, you have the new expert problem. After the quake, there was a massive construction boom. Everyone needed a house. Suddenly, every guy who's ever held a trowel is calling himself a mason.
So the demand created a supply of unqualified experts.
Exactly. You have people who were farmers 6 months ago now directing construction. They didn't necessarily know the seismic codes, they just knew how to stack bricks. So households thought they were hiring experts, but they weren't.
And the third factor?
It's timing. The people who relied on documents were often the most proactive. They wanted to start rebuilding immediately.
Which you can understand.
Of course, but the government didn't release the official updated safety guidelines until 6 months after the earthquake. So these proactive people were building based on old manuals that didn't have the right seismic info. They were punished for being fast.
That's pretty tragic. So they tried to do the right thing, but the system wasn't ready for them.
Yeah, it's a harsh lesson. Speed kills if the information isn't right.
Okay, we've talked logistics, money, jobs, and experts. What about what's going on inside people's heads? Let's talk about motivation.
So this is pure psychology. The researchers looked at why people rebuilt the way they did, and they found a huge split between intrinsic and extrinsic motivation.
So intrinsic being, I want this for myself, and extrinsic being, I'm doing this because someone told me to.
Right. People who said things like, I want a stronger house, who were actively searching for information because they were genuinely afraid of the next quake. They built safer houses. They owned the process.
And the people who said, I built this way because the village council told me to?
They built less safe houses. So this is probably linked to a psychological concept called reactance.
Reactance. Can you break that down?
It's this very human resistance to being controlled. So when people feel like they're being forced to do something by social pressure or a government mandate, they push back. They might go through the motions to get the grant money.
But they don't really buy into it.
They don't buy in. So they might cut corners where the inspector can't see. They act out of compliance, not commitment. And in construction, compliance without commitment is a recipe for disaster.
This leads us to one of the more baffling aspects, the demonstration house.
Ah, yes, the model house.
I've seen these. An NGO comes in, builds one perfect safe model house in the village to show everyone how it's done.
It's a standard tool in the aid toolkit. And yet, this study found that participating in these programs was associated with lower housing safety.
That seems pretty absurd. If I see a perfect example, I should be able to copy it and be even safer, not less safe.
You should, but it's about how people see. So these villagers are busy farmers. They can't necessarily stand there for weeks watching every single step of the builds. They might pop in, they have a look, and they leave.
So they see the finished product.
Or they see the aesthetics. They see the nice roof, the window placement. They copy the look of the safe house, but some important safety features are not so easy to notice.
Like the thickness of structural bands and other geometric ratio.
Exactly, the foundation ties. So they build a house that looks like the safe house, but it isn't.
And they change things too?
Yeah, they change things. They look at the model and say, that's nice, but I want my window over there. Not realizing that moving the window just compromised the entire sheer wall design. So they treat the engineering as a suggestion, not a rule. This is not to criticize. We know that these people are busy and they're trying their best.
Wow. Okay, so pulling this all together, it seems like building more resilient houses is so much more complicated than just shipping in money and cement.
It's more than an engineering problem, really. It's a psychological and economic ecosystem.
So if you had to boil this down to a few key insights for a policymaker, for example, what would those be?
First, access influences quality. If you can't get a truck there, you have to solve the logistics first. And it's not just about convenience for the homeowner. The study's very clear that it's about access to 3 critical resources, which are masons, laborers, and materials. This leads us to the next point, the role of knowledge. We generally assume knowledge is always a good thing, the more you know and all that.
Right.
But the text says construction knowledge has a dual influence. Some forms of knowledge promote safety, other forms of knowledge actually hinder it.
But how can knowing something about construction be bad for safety?
Well, think about traditional knowledge versus, say, engineered knowledge. If a builder has been doing things a certain way for 20 years, they have a lot of knowledge. They can know how to mix mortar, how to stack bricks.
They have the muscle memory.
But what if the method they've used for 20 years is actually flawed when it comes to earthquakes?
I see. So it's the difference between I know how to build a house and I know how to build a house that survives a 7 magnitude quake.
Exactly. And the study suggests that knowledge itself becomes a barrier to adopting the new, safer techniques. Okay, third, money needs rails. Cash without conditions gets diverted. Cash with conditions forces compliance. It encourages the implementation of safer housing construction.
Because you don't get the rest of the money otherwise.
Meanwhile, stable incomes promote increased safety.
This was the first difference between the soldiers and the shopkeepers that you were talking about earlier.
Right. A stable income, like a salary from the army, it's predictable. You know what's coming in. You can budget for the house.
Whereas a business can be more volatile.
And this is key. It's a competitor for resources.
So small businesses like shopkeepers could not use the houses in the catalog of safe house designs, which was provided by the government. Okay, what else?
So there's the external support system. The form of reconstruction assistance heavily influences safety. And it mentions a factor that I think gets overlooked in disaster relief: time. Assistance needs to be distributed in a timely and practical manner to support the construction of earthquake-resistant housing.
And on the human side of things?
The study says that intrinsic motivation, so a personal drive to build safer houses, is an enabler, whereas the external pressure can create resistance. If you just tell people what to do, you might actually be creating a backlash that undermines everything.
That last point is the one that really sticks with me. We spend so much energy on mass messaging and disaster relief. But if that external pressure triggers this reactance that makes people build worse houses just to feel in control, are we actually doing more harm than good?
It's a disturbing thought, isn't it? It suggests the next time a disaster strikes, we need to spend less time telling people what to do and a lot more time helping them want to do it.
Because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter if you check a box on a form. It only matters if the wall holds.
That's it.
Okay, thanks for bringing in this cool study. That's it for this episode. If you'd like to read the original journal article we've been discussing, you can find the link on our website, geoversity.io. And that's all for this episode of the Geoversity podcast. Stay curious, and we'll catch you on the next episode.
Bye, everyone. Thanks for listening.
Bye.